So, ladies and gentlemen, they really rapping out here. I repeat, they really rapping out here. And Ray Vaughn is applying pressure. For the people that don't know or weren't paying attention, a few months ago, Joey Badass had put out the song The Ruler's Back. Now, he put this song out right as the Kendrick Lamar versus Drake beef was nearing its end. It already saw its climax. And at this point, things had kind of pretty much ended at this point. Joey came out of nowhere kicking up dust and taking shots at the West Coast, saying that basically he believes that the West Coast, a lot of people were glazing the West Coast and glazing artists way more than he would like for them to. A lot of people from the West Coast, they got offended, whether it be producers, whether it be YouTubers, put out diss tracks, as well as rappers tied to TDE, specifically Daylyt and Ray Vaughn. They put out diss tracks of their own. Somebody on Joey Badass's team, CJ Fly, he put out a response to them as well. And not a whole lot had come from that up until recently. As of yesterday, there was a cypher uploaded to Red Bull's 1520 channel where Joey Badass was in the cypher with Big Sean and Ab Soul, and Joey Badass basically put out a response to them again, taking shots at them, mostly Daylyt, but he also was taking shots at Ray Vaughn as well. And it was a dope cypher. I literally just talked about it yesterday. It was a dope cypher all around. Everybody killed it. But Ray Vaughn did what he should have done, which is take the opportunity and run with it. I'm assuming he wants to roll out a project, which is smart. He, even in the diss track itself, he said, hey, I'm gonna turn this into a rollout. There's nothing wrong with that if the opportunity's there. And so he puts out this song Hoe Era, which is obviously taking shots at Joey Badass and also playing on the word pro era and obviously flipping it to Hoe Era. He packed a lot of statements into this 3-minute diss. I'm gonna just start from the things that I thought were most notable. Main thing he wanted to point out was he said that Joey Badass was jealous of TDE and the West Coast and what they have going, and there is some truth to that. Now, I like all of the artists involved in this. I'm an artist myself, but even then, I still will call a spade a spade. And Joey Badass, his response, even his original song, The Ruler's Back, definitely came off like it was coming from a place of jealousy, like he felt some type of way that they were getting so much praise and attention. And then he also pointed out that Joey is talking, is taking shots with and doesn't really have backup, even though he's essentially kind of speaking or trying to speak or think he's speaking for the entire East Coast. And even Joey acknowledged just in his cypher verse where he said, hey, I don't need backup or I don't need anybody. I could do this on my own, blah, blah, blah. And Ray Vaughn, when he points this out, he is correct. But that's not just a Joey thing. That's a New York thing. Now, again, and I've said this many, many times, what people got to understand is New York does not have a culture of like heavy collaboration. That's not a thing. It's just not. This is why when you see like the South and the West Coast, they always go so much harder for their artists. Their radio stations go through a much more concentrated effort to support those artists from those regions in the South and the West Coast. Like even the fans in those regions will have a much stronger desire to focus and support on those local artists in the South and the West Coast. That's not a thing in New York. Maybe it was 50 years ago, I have no idea. But as far as like in my lifetime, as somebody who grew up in the 2000s and 2010s, that's just never been a New York thing. Again, I grew up in New York City. I know for a fact New York City is a every man for themselves type of city. It's every man for themselves type of region. That's just a mentality. That's the culture. It's a culture of every man for themselves. So there's already not a lot of collaborating in the first place. So Ray Vaughn, when he brings that up, he is correct. And it was an interesting angle because he also kind of left the door open for a little bit of, I guess you could say maybe he's trying to set Joey up to alienate himself a little bit more from the people that are in the East Coast. And what I mean by that is towards the end of the song, Ray Vaughn says, hey, you let Ice Spice become the king of New York. Now, obviously, Ice Spice is not the king of New York. Ice Spice at this point is not even relevant musically anymore. But that being said, it's still an interesting statement, because then I'm wondering, is he trying to bait Joey into referencing Ice Spice in his response? And if he is, I hope Joey isn't dumb enough to do that. I think it's pretty unnecessary. And then even then, from a PR standpoint, it would really just make you look bad, because people would start saying, well, why are you picking on Ice Spice? Why you why are you dragging her into this and that? And I just think, and then also in general, I think that may possibly turn some people off from Joey in the New York region. I could be wrong though, but I personally, I don't think it would even be worth it to even acknowledge the Ice Spice line. That's kind of just something that you could just ignore if you're Joey, if Joey even plans on responding to this. But the song had a lot of great punchlines like where he said, you keep attacking Dot, he think he Pac-Man. Punchlines where he said, hey, I used to play ball so I can handle niggas on the screen, referencing, of course, Joey Badass being on the TV screen on the show Power. Speaking of Power, he also mentioned the show Power and the TV channel Stars. That was one of the schemes he used in several of his punchlines. And he also brought up the fact that Joey said he was a nobody, and he said, hey, how am I nobody when I wrote for your baby mama? Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I gotta double check that, but that would be interesting if Ray Vaughn is in fact somebody who wrote songs for I forgot the name of the woman that Joey had a kid with. It really doesn't matter, honestly, but Ray Vaughn also pointed out the fact that Joey never really blew up like that. He even says like, hey, you keep saying you're back, but like nobody cares. I know where you were at and you were never on the map. And these things are true. Now, I grew up in the 2010s witnessing the rise of Joey Badass on, in the mixtape era, in the Dat Piff era. I remember, I've always liked his music. I've always thought he was a solid artist. However, looking at it objectively, Ray Vaughn is correct. Joey Badass never really went mainstream like that, not until he got on the show Power. And I don't watch the show Power anymore, but from what I understand, the spinoff that Joey is on is still very popular. So I'm sure that adds to Ray Vaughn's point that, hey, people know you more for the acting than the music. He also called CJ Fly a drug addict and said he's like 40. And I'm not here to age shame, because I don't like the fact that we constantly clown older people in hip hop for being old. It keeps bringing out the idea that there's an age limit to be a rapper, which I don't like. But again, overall, this was a very solid diss track. I don't like the fact that so many hip hop fans are so obsessed over how long it took or how quick it took. Like, I don't like this culture that's developed because of Drake, because I do blame Drake for this to an extent, because in my opinion, when Drake dropped back to back during the whole Drake and Meek Mill beef, to me, that's when fans really started obsessing over how long it takes somebody to turn around and crank out a diss track. So I'm seeing so many people obsess over the fact that, like, oh my gosh, he responded in less than 24 hours. And I'm like, who cares? For all we know, he could have already had this diss track recorded ahead of time. Like, a bunch of these lines, a bunch of these lyrics, these are lyrics that he easily could have already had stashed for months. Like, he started the song off calling him baby teeth. You think he needed 24 hours to think of that? You think, like, nah, bro, like, that was an insult he already had stashed already. I don't think people should focus on how long it takes. It's really not that relevant. See, again, this is a phenomenon that only started post Drake dropping back to back, because before that, in previous generations, a lot of these rappers in these beefs of previous generations, they didn't put out responses for like weeks, sometimes months or whatever. But either way, I think people should just focus on the lyrics itself and not so much how long or how quickly it can be released. And as far as the lyrics, I think this was a solid diss track, but let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think this was a good track, or do you think it was bad? And do you think Joey Badass will respond?